We're gonna be discussing a treadmill. Unfortunately, I don't have access to a treadmill, so I'll just be explaining everything, and then in the back you're going to see a treadmill where I'll point out the different mechanisms and stuff when I speak about it. Okay, so the setup for a treadmill, first of all, you need to ensure that the belt has stopped moving and that the gradient is back to flat, so basically 0% incline, before getting on the treadmill or getting off. Holding the handrail, you must straddle the belt with one foot on each of the side bars, okay? And then you start at a low speed, and when the belt is moving, you step on it at a low speed, and and then still holding onto the handrails, okay? And then you slowly adjust the speed based on what you want to do. So if you want to go for a jog, then you adjust the speed to your jogging speed, or if you just want to go for a walk, you keep it at walking speed. So basically wherever you're comfortable, and then if you feel comfortable enough, you can release your grip and you can move your arms in a natural motion. The correct forming technique on the treadmill, so you're going to remain front and center on the belt without leaning or drifting too far, so basically in the middle of the treadmill. You're going to use a natural heel-toe walking technique until the speed increases to the point where you start to jog. That's if you want to jog. The benefits and advantages of using a treadmill. So with a treadmill, you can adjust the speed and elevation, which is gradient. So that's nice. If you would like to jog or run uphill or downhill, you can adjust that, and the speed at which you want to run. So if you want to jog, walk, or sprint, you can adjust that. It's got nice balance support, and it's easily supervisable. So there's no potholes or uneven grounds because it's a flat surface with a bit of an incline if you prefer to use an incline, and easy supervision because you don't end up running and getting hurt about 500 meters away from your house. It's suitable for a wide range of participants in cardiovascular modes. So if you want to have a low intensity cardiovascular exercise, then you can just walk on the treadmill. If you a beginner and you've never run before, you can use the treadmill and you won't feel like you've run too far, because when you get tired you can stop. The fit principles applied to a treadmill, so we'll start with frequency. The frequency is 3 to 5 times per week. In general, beginners can do like 2 to 3 times a week with as little as 10 minutes, like depending on their age, weight, and fitness level. And then obviously as you advance and get better, you can start training a bit more and getting to the point where you run every day of the week, if that is what you are aiming for. Intensity, a beginner should be exercising at 55 to 90% of their maximum heart rate, and eventually when their body adapts, they can gradually increase the intensity and push themselves a bit harder. Type, it's a cardiovascular exercise. And time, you can usually run for 20 to 60 minutes. But yeah, a beginner can begin with a shorter run, and then when their body adapts, they can increase the time they can run for. So basically, when the person gets fitter, they'll be able to run for longer. The immediate physiological responses are an increase in heart rate, increase in stroke volume, and an increase in cardiac output. So basically your heart starts pumping faster. So that's the immediate physiological responses in order to provide your muscles with energy to be able to last the complete the cardiovascular exercise. The long-term physiological adaptations are a decrease in resting heart rate. So obviously as you get fitter, your resting heart rate will decrease. A decrease in blood pressure, obviously as soon as you get fitter, and an increase in cardiac muscle fibers, so your muscles get stronger and more defined as you train them. And then just some precautions when using a treadmill is be careful of falling off the treadmill, from slacking down too much when you're tired. So when you get tired, you start to run a bit slower, and then the treadmill starts pushing you to the back, so you must just watch out for that. And also in the beginning, you must watch out to not overrun it and run too far forward, because then that can put you off and then you lose your balance or something. And it's also important to not push yourself to the point where you become susceptible to injury. So where you can make a stupid mistake where your leg buckles and then you fall and then the belt shoots you off. So it's important to know your limits and push yourself responsibly in order to overload your workout. And it's important to stretch before and after to prevent injury. Also, when stretching before and after, you'll increase your range of motion and you'll just become healthier. And it's important that you get enough sleep and or eating a diet that gives you enough energy to train, because your body needs to get the energy, so you can use your diet to get you that energy to be able to run on the treadmill. So I'll be demonstrating strength training for your upper body, which is a push-up. So for push-up, you want to keep your hands slightly wider than your shoulder width. You want to keep your arms fully extended at first, and you want to balance on your toes. Just a tip, if you're struggling to balance on your toes, you can put your feet a bit wider, which will stabilize your body, making it a bit easier to do the push-up. Yeah, so once you're in that position, you want to make sure that in the eccentric phase of movement, or both actually, in the concentric and eccentric phase of movement, so whenever you're moving, you want to keep your form strong and your body strong, keep a strong core, okay? So that means that when you're going down or up, your back should not be dipping or curving up. So let me demonstrate. So now we're just going to remember, hands below our shoulders, okay, slightly wider than shoulder width, okay, and then we want to balance on our toes, then we want to keep a strong core, and we want to drop down about 10 centimeters from the floor and extend. If you struggle to do a normal push-up, you can regress the push-up by shortening the resistance lever, and instead of balancing on your toes, you can balance on your knees. That'll look like this, there, and you do push-ups there. Also, while keeping a strong core and not having your back dip or curve. And if it's too easy, you can release the tension when you have finished the eccentric phase of movement. So that's the downward motion. So when you finished, you release the tension and you go back. That'll look like this. So remember, we get into our position, hands slightly wider than shoulder width, balancing on our toes, and keep a strong form or a strong core. And we're going to drop down, we're going to release, and push back up. Now we'll be talking about strength training methods for the upper body, which we said was the push-up. The benefits and advantages of push-ups is it promotes upper body strength. It strengthens your core muscles because of you need to keep your core strong at all times when doing a push-up, because you don't want your back to dip or curve. It can be done at home. I mean, you can do push-ups wherever you want. It promotes bone density. It helps with balance and posture, and it's basically a full body workout because you're using your abdominals to stabilize yourself while balancing on your toes. You're using your pectoralis major and your pectoral muscles, your back muscles to stabilize your chest and shoulders, which are busy performing push-up, which are your mobilizing muscles. So yeah, it's push-ups is a really good strength training exercise. Even if you are able to go into a gym, incorporating push-ups is always a good idea. The fit principles for push-up: frequency of beginners should do push-ups once a week so that their body can recover properly in the beginning. Well, like some intermediate athletes do push-ups like almost every day. I know of intermediate athletes or elite athletes that do push-ups every day on top of their gym. Yeah, so like I said earlier, it's just such an amazing upper body strength exercise that you should try and incorporate it wherever you can. Low intensity for beginners until their body has adapted to the exercise, and then they can apply the overload principle. So start off slow so that their muscles can get used to the range of motion, the and then can recover properly afterwards. And then after that, they can obviously increase the intensity using the overload principle, so do more reps or progress the exercise a bit, so it's a bit more difficult. So yeah, the type is a strength training exercise, like I've said. And a beginner should not spend more than 10 minutes on push-ups and its variations, but as the body adapts, the amount of reps will increase, which will increase the amount of time spent in the exercise. So as a beginner, say you're a beginner, most beginners do about 10 reps of push-ups per set. So it really shouldn't take that long, with push-ups and the different variations. But obviously, as you do progress the exercise, it's going to take a longer time because you'll be doing more reps, or it'll be a longer phase of movement, and the time will just increase. The immediate physiological responses when doing push-ups is increased blood flow to working muscles, obviously to give them the energy that they need to perform the exercise. Increased motor unit activity, increased intramuscular activity, increased use of nutrients and oxygen, changing pH levels, and increases production of metabolites requiring elimination. The long-term adaptations to this exercise are muscle fiber size increase, obviously as your muscles get stronger and develop. Increased muscle contractile strength, as your muscles start to get stronger, obviously if you're using the overload principle. Increased tendon tensile strength and increased ligament strength. Just a few cautionary tips when doing push-ups. It's always good to train with someone no matter what exercise you do. So you can train with someone and just ask them to help you with your form, make sure your back isn't dipping or curving, and don't push yourself too hard if you are just a beginner, because you could injure your pectoralis major muscle or your anterior deltoids, which are the main mobilizing muscles for this exercise. So if you push them too hard in the beginning, you can injure them. So just know your limits, okay, and then just perform a responsible kind of overload principle. And then always perform with correct technique. I say this over and over again. I'd rather have a good quality push-up, or let's say I'd rather have 5 good quality push-ups than 12 push-ups which were done with incorrect form, because incorrect form is a problem that leads to many other problems like injuries, and yeah, I won't get into that for now. For lower body, we have leg press. Unfortunately, I also don't have access to a leg press machine, which I would love to. But anyway, so for the setup of leg press, you're going to lie on the incline bench. There is a picture behind me, so I will point it out in that. So you're going to lie on the incline bench with your head and back against the padding. Okay, then you're going to place your feet on the foot plate, which is in front of you, about hip width apart, and bend your knees to 90 degrees. Yeah, if the foot plate is a bit higher because someone used it before and your knees are not at 90 degrees, that's okay. Just when you're doing the reps, you're gonna go down, or the eccentric phase of movement will last until your knees are at 90 degrees. And then you can grab the handles for assisted support, and you also use the handles to release the weight when you're ready to start with your set. How to perform a leg press. When the weight is released, so when you release the weight with your hands, okay, you're going to push the weight with your legs, so it's going to be a knee extension to just before a full extension, so you don't want to hyperextend. And yeah, so it's just you're gonna extend until you have a slight bend in your knee, and then when you drop the weight, so the eccentric contraction, which is knee flexion, we'll go back to, like I said, when your knees make a 90-degree angle. Benefits and advantages of doing leg press: it is a lot better for beginners, and there's a lot less risk for injury compared to, for example, squats, which is a free weight exercise. Okay, so it's a lot better for beginners. It isolates the major leg muscles. Okay, so it eliminates your back and your core from working as what you would be using when you perform a squat. There's no direct pressure on your spine, like I said. It's good for injury rehab, because it isolates your leg muscles. It's good for building quadricep strength because it isolates the quadriceps and hamstrings as the stabilizer, and your glutes. Sorry. It's good for hamstring and glute strength because they're the stabilizing muscles that are working in a leg press. And there's lots of variations with fast progression. So you can, I know of a few variations. So you can point your toes out for vastus medialis, and you can point your toes a bit inside to target your vastus lateralis in your quadriceps. For the fit principles of leg press, you will perform a leg press once a week. So when you're doing legs or lower body or whenever, intensity, it's low intensity for beginners until their bodies have adapted and are ready to be overloaded. So you're just going to get your muscles warm and used to leg press, and then when you're ready to overload, you start with a responsible overload. The type, it's a strength training exercise. Time, depending on the different variations, I mean, you could spend like 5 to 10 minutes on the leg press machine. But yeah, it all depends on the variations that you've put on and if you've progressed or regressed the exercise, but it really shouldn't take more than 10 to 15 minutes probably, with all the variations taken into account. So yeah, the immediate physiological responses to a leg press is increased blood flow to your working muscles, so your quadriceps as your mobilizers and hamstring and glutes as your stabilizing muscles, increased motor unit activity, increased intramuscular activity, increased use of nutrients and oxygen, changing pH levels, and increases production of metabolites requiring elimination. The long-term physiological adaptations is muscle fiber size increase. So obviously when your muscles get stronger and get more developed, they'll grow. Increased muscle contractile strength, so when your muscles get stronger. Increased tendon tensile strength, and increased ligament strength. Okay. Some cautions when it comes to leg press is don't do this exercise too often. Like I said with the push-ups, let your legs rest when doing the leg press, because you could also hurt yourself if you push yourself too hard. Like I always say, responsible overloading. Also stay vigilant if the machine seems like it's going to malfunction. You'll start to feel how the machine feels, and then you can just... This is a very dangerous machine because that foot plate can just drop on you, so you need to stay as vigilant as possible when you use the leg press machine. Don't put more weight on the machine that you can lift. So like I said, responsible overload, because if that foot plate drops on you, it's dropping on you. Although some leg press machines do have a catch, but it's still not a very comfortable place to be with that weight pressing down on your body. And wear shoes with good grip, because from personal experience I've seen people wearing shoes with no grip and their feet slip and then that foot plate drops straight onto them. For the second last exercise, we have a maximum speed exercise. So I also don't have a demonstration of the maximum speed exercise because in East London today it was really gale force winds and you couldn't hear anything off of the mic when I was busy explaining. But I've got a picture here at the back of what the setup would look like. Okay, so for the setup, you're going to place a beacon for a starting point, okay? And then you're going to have a beacon 30 meters away, 50 meters away, and 60 meters away. Okay, so you'll start at the first beacon, which is the starting point, and you're going to get into a position to sprint, so a low position ready to explode off of your preferred leg. Then what you're going to do is you're going to build up a sprint to a 30 meter beacon where you should be about 80% of your top speed. When you cross the 30 meter beacon, you speed up to reach your maximum speed, so give it your all, give a full sprint. And when you're at the 50 meter beacon, you should have reached your maximum speed, which you hold until the next beacon, which is 10 meters away. And then after that, you stop, you walk back to the start and regain your stamina, and you only repeat the exercise when you have regained your stamina, because it's not a cardiovascular exercise, it's a speed exercise. So you're working on increasing the power output that your legs can produce instead of your cardiovascular kind of fitness. Okay. The correct form and technique to perform this exercise is start in a crouched position, so like you're going to start sprinting basically, with your preferred foot behind you. So if you're right-handed or if you're left-handed, you put your right foot behind you so you can explode off of that preferred foot. And then when the drill starts, so when your friend or your time starts, or when you're told to go, you push off your back foot and project yourself forward while landing on your other foot, which then repeats the process in your obviously natural running or sprinting technique. Benefits and advantages of this speed exercise: a stronger stride, like I said, it increases the power output of your legs. More muscle, obviously over time when you start applying an overload principle. So for example, let's say you tie a tire to you, or like what professionals use, they use a parachute, and that'll obviously bring or create a type of resistance behind you, which means you're carrying more weight, or you need to apply more force to be able to run at the same speed. Um, Another more advantages and benefits are stronger bones and connective tissue, more anaerobic endurance, better balance, better fat burn, and lower risk of injury, because you should be warm before starting this exercise, and it's quick bursts of power, and it's not really long strenuous activity on the muscles. Obviously, it is strenuous, but it's not long strenuous. It's just quick bursts of speed. And then explaining the foot principles of this sprinting exercise. So the frequency is once a week for beginners, and when your body adapts to the exercise, you can increase the workload to twice a week. You really shouldn't be going more than twice a week in terms of this specific drill. Intensity, medium intensity, as the drill is extremely high. Well, it's when you're doing the drill, it's high intensity, but because you do get a lot of rest, since it's not about cardiovascular exercise, it's about power output. I'll probably say it's about medium intensity, because you get to rest fully between your reps. Type, it's a speed and power, so speed and just generating more power out of your legs to be able to propel yourself faster and further. Time, about 30 minutes for beginners, and as you adapt you can go for up to an hour. Obviously not on the same exercise, you're going to bring more and incorporate more speed exercises into your 30 minutes or an hour. The immediate physiological responses to this speed training exercise is your increased heart rate, increased breathing rate, increased cardiac output, and increased lactate levels. Obviously when your heart starts to pump faster, but that'll happen as you progress with the exercise. The long-term physiological adaptations is increased muscle fiber size, and increased muscle contractile strength, increased tensile strength, increased ligament strength. Yeah, so basically just as you start applying your overload and getting that resistance, getting more power output from your legs, you'll start to see all these long-term physiological adaptations. Just some cautions and warnings. Don't train for too long. So remember, responsible overload. Stretch before and after training to reduce your risk for injury. So when you warm up, make sure you're nice and warm, and remember to cool down. Don't train too frequently, because it's going to drain you, because it is a lot of work, it's hard work. So remember to rest. Eat enough food to be able to fuel your training, because you can't want to train if you don't have energy to train. Get enough sleep, because sleep is important, so you're nice rested and ready to give your all. And be vigilant about your muscles and joints, and like how they're feeling on the day, because sometimes you'll wake up and you'll just feel, for example, your hamstring it's not feeling nice, and then rather just take it easier, because you'd rather take that day easy than spend the next 3-4 weeks recovering because you injured your hamstring. The next exercise we'll be doing is a flexibility exercise, and I've chosen a hamstring stretch because many people neglect their hamstrings, and it causes really, really tight hamstrings, which can lead to injury pretty easily. So yeah, for a hamstring stretch, we're just going to do a basic one. So we're going to stand with our feet just a bit narrower than hip width, okay? We're going to stand, and we're basically just going to reach and touch for our toes. We don't want to bounce, we want to keep it a controlled movement, okay? Until you feel the tension or stress on your hamstring muscles, okay? You're just going to hold it there for at least 30 seconds. Now if you want to see from the side, you're going to notice that my knees are slightly bent because I'm not flexible enough to touch my toes. Another important thing is to keep your back straight, because it'll stretch your hamstring muscles a lot better if you keep your back straight instead of curving your back and touching your toes, if you just keep it straight, I feel the stretch instantly. It just what do you call it, multiplies the stretch. So let's just remember, feet slightly narrower than hip width. Okay, now I'm going to go from the side. You can keep your legs straight or slightly bent if you can't reach your toes. Okay, so then I'm going to keep my legs slightly bent because I'm not that flexible. I'm going to try and keep my back straight to prevent any injury. And then I feel the tension, and I'm just going to hold it for about 30 seconds. And that's a static hamstring stretch. And for the last exercise, we've got a hamstring stretch, like I just demonstrated. Yeah, so the benefits and advantages of a hamstring stretch, the static, is increased range of motion. It improves your posture, obviously, which comes from an increased range of motion, and it loosens all your muscles that are so tight. For example, your glutes, your hamstrings, which are so tight, will eventually loosen up with an increased range of motion and give you a better posture. It helps prevent injury, like I said, warming up cooling down with this stretch after your exercise can help prevent your injury, as well as reducing your stiffness or your soreness after the workout. Calms your mind, believe it or not. It releases tension and it increases your energy levels. The fit principles for a hamstring stretch: frequency is more than 2 to 3 times for your major muscle groups, and it's beneficial to stretch every day. It's good to stretch a lot, increasing your range of motion and just loosening up your tense muscles in your body. Intensity, so you're going to stretch until the point of slight discomfort or like a feeling of tightness in your muscle, and hold it for 30 seconds for static, 30 to 60 seconds of static stretching for older adults, and 10 to 30 seconds of static stretching for most adults. Now that's the time also, and the type is it's a flexibility exercise. The immediate physiological responses is releases endorphins, increases blood flow to muscles, heart rate increases before exercise, decreases after. That's obviously if you're going to be doing a dynamic stretch before exercise, and then decreases your heart rate with a static stretch after the exercise. It increases activity in the parasympathetic nervous system. It's good for stress relief. So it's really beneficial in almost every way possible. The long-term physiological adaptations is a greater range of motion. It improves your posture, heals or improves back pain, because obviously it releases all these tense muscles in your glutes and hamstrings, which puts less pressure on your erector spinae and lower back muscles. It improves your flexibility. It improves performance in physical activities. Obviously, a higher range of motion, more potential to have a high power output. It improves your circulation, and it decreases tension headaches. Just a few warnings and cautions when stretching. Only stretch to the point of mild discomfort. So you don't want to push your muscles for too far, because you can end up pulling or tearing a muscle, which could be extremely painful, and which will cause you to have to rest and recover for a while. Control your breathing while doing the exercise. This is obviously, so if you're doing a cool down stretch, regulate your breathing, just calm down and breathe. I've heard someone call it a yoga breath, where you deep breath in, and then exhale that deep breath. So control your breathing, balance the stretching. So basically, the simplest way I can put it is when you stretch your posterior, you stretch your anterior. So just balance your stretches, and try and include stretching in your daily routine, and try adding new stretches so that you don't get bored of stretching the same way. So for the next time which you do a static hamstring stretch, you could sit down and just extend your legs. So instead of standing, if maybe your legs are tired, you can just sit down and stretch for your toes. Yeah.